Mr. Angel Abdulahad. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. Make yourself comfortable. There is water there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
I am
evening.
Carrie Carlton, School Board President. I would like to welcome you to District 7. I would like to welcome Angel Abdulahad to this interview for the position of Superintendent. Mr. Abdulahad is currently Superintendent of Madison School District in Madison Heights. I'll take a few moments to briefly describe our format. The interview may take up to 90 minutes. There will be 23 questions from the board. For the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give you the opportunity to ask questions to the board and make a closing statement. We will let you know if time is becoming an issue and there is a need to pick up the pace of the responses. As the board hears from each candidate and weighs this critical decision, it will be doing so through lens of the candidate profile that was developed with considerable input from our stakeholders. Our intent is to identify a candidate that fits the best, that best fits his profile, which board members have at hand. For those present in our audience, you may submit feedback by way of the form provided for this purpose. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education as the elected representatives of our community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process. Mr. Abdulahad, we welcome you again, and feel free to remove your mask if you choose so during your interview session.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with some opening questions.
Okay.
While we've had the opportunity to review your application material, our audience members have not. Please briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So my entire professional career has been in education. I've served only in 2 school districts since '02. I started out my pre-student teaching in Pontiac, and where I was hired as a teacher. And then 2013, I went to Madison District Public Schools. There I was hired as an ESL Spanish teacher. And in 2015, I was promoted to middle school principal, where I served as middle school principal for 3 years. And then I was invited to help the board kind of stabilize the district in the midst of a lot of turmoil that happened in 2019. I told them I would do it temporarily because we had M-step testing, and I would do it while they did the search. A month later, they said, we're just going to appoint you superintendent. So in the last 3 years, I've been superintendent here at Madison District Public Schools. What sets me apart, I believe, is, well, I'm trilingual. I'm not sure if other people, I speak Arabic, Spanish, and English. I do understand Chaldean, but I don't know how to read or write it. I have a passion for serving kids. I believe that's a byproduct of what school was like for me. I went to Oak Park School District, and there I kind of, in the late 80s and early 90s, they didn't have an ESL program. So it was basically a sink or swim. You either survive or you don't. And so this is my opportunity to give back. I wanted to do something meaningful in my life, and helping kids. I think there's no other better opportunity for me to do so.
Research on our district, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term priorities our district will need to address? And how would your background and skills help us address those priorities?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Given your research on our district, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term priorities our district will need to address? How would your background and skills help us address those priorities?
I believe in my research, some of the things that you're experiencing, we've experienced ourselves, COVID being number one. Whatever decision you make is not going to be a popular one. Whether it's mask or no mask, it's remote learning, not remote learning. It's going to be unpopular by some. But we have to make educated decisions, and we have to stand by those decisions. Once we make a decision, we implement it, and we adjust if the data shows that we need to adjust. Otherwise, we continue the course. I also saw that you didn't have all your contracts secured. I'm not sure if you outsourced your custodial contracts or your custodial. I didn't see that there. I didn't see your current budget, so I would like to see your current budget and see how you're implementing COVID money, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, and see if that's the best use of those one-time payments to help District 7 flourish. I know what we've done at Madison is we've brought on some things that we couldn't necessarily afford. We brought on a lot of social workers, guidance counselors to help stabilize social emotional learning for our kids. I know a lot of people are driven by data right now, but I really believe that the last 18 months have caused some damage to our kids. Being a father of 4, I know the gaps that are existing in learning right now, but that has to be second to addressing the social emotional learning of our kids. One other thing that I brought on that I didn't see is a diversity, equity, inclusion director. I saw that you kind of started the work with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I believe that you need to do some more development, some more learning to make sure that whatever we do in District 7 is fair, equitable for everyone, for every student, no matter what race they are, what color they are, their social class, whatever the case is. How do we level the playing field for our students here? And those are a couple of things that I would address.
What are the immediate challenges you would expect to face? Given these, tell us how you would hit the ground running on your first day and be ready to address these challenges.
I think before I hit the ground running, I need to do some listening. So I really need to do a listening tour, and I'll share that with you. I really need to hear from everyone. And what I really like is coming in as an outsider. I don't have any biases. I'm just going to listen to everyone, every stakeholder, hear them out, see what input, because I believe whether it's a cafeteria worker, social worker, PTO mom, they all have input. I want to give them a voice. I want to hear them out. And then at the end, when we create the plan, then we'll own the plan. But before I start just producing plans for you, I would hope you want me to understand the needs of every stakeholder. I would love to visit the buildings, talk to the staff, talk to the kids, talk to the administration, the secretaries. I'm a firm believer that even though administration is the head, the secretaries are the neck. And what happens with the neck? It directs the head on which way to turn. So I love to sit down with secretaries, hear their input, listen to them. And then once I gather enough information, then I will report it to the board. We'll devise a plan together, and then we roll it out.
At this time, I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you.
My questions are regarding district relations.
Okay.
So maintaining healthy relationships with the school and community stakeholders is important to the Board of Education. Please share with us how you have on about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community?
That's a tough one, especially with COVID. I think civility the last 18 months has been out the window. If you notice how people behave. So we have to kind of restore that civility and that professionalism, disagreeing with someone, but still giving them a voice, respecting their opinion. We could disagree on many things. The board could disagree with the community on many things. I could disagree with the board on many things. It's what we do after you disagree that matters. Can you come together for the kids? Because it doesn't matter what we do sitting up here discussing it. If it's not helping and impacting the children, then what good does it do us? What good does it do us if we sit here, we adopt plans, we bring in all these coaches and all this training, and then it dies at the table. So.
How do you think various stakeholders, such as staff members, parents, and community members, should be involved in our planning process and in setting the direction for our district?
Can you repeat that one more time?
How do you think various stakeholders, such as staff members, parents, and community members, should be involved in our planning process and in setting the direction for the district?
Okay. So during the peak of COVID, I didn't make a single decision without bringing in MEA. We would do letters of understanding. Even though we have to make a decision, that decision cannot be on its own. So I met with custodial unions, secretarial unions, parapros, teachers, administrators to come up with a game plan that was fair for all. Once we adopted it all, then we presented that plan and did a town hall, but it was via Zoom. With the parents, we shared that out. It was well received, but there was a lot of questions. And I didn't go to school to be the health expert. So, we brought on a school nurse. In Oakland County, we meet once a week with health officials. And they kind of give us guidance. I return and report that guidance. And if there's any changes, we change with those. Now, I set aside my personal opinions on mask and mandates, but we follow the mandate. And when there's flexibility, for example, outside, then we went with options. I am not a believer of forcing anyone to do anything. Now, there are some mandates in schools which I'll support, but outside, if it's safe enough for MHSAA to allow football, then it's safe enough for students to be outside on the playground, getting a mask break and playing around and having fun. So.
How do we create a district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically, and aligning our actions to achieve strategic outcomes?
One more time.
How do we create a district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically, and aligning our actions to achieve strategic outcomes?
Well, I mean, once the board and administration comes up with a game plan, how do you analyze that game plan? How do you assess whether it's working or not? We were small enough, you're small enough to turn on a dime when something's not working. However, how do you assess that? You could do surveys, you could do data analysis, you could send out questionnaires, you could do town halls virtually, just to gather feedback. You could talk to your parent groups. So it's slightly different because I'm coming in as an outsider, but having been at Madison as a teacher, I knew a lot of parents, I knew a lot of teachers. So I would just walk around and talk to the parents and say, hey, tell me your opinion on this, tell me your opinion on that. And then I would do a survey, and then based on the feedback that I got, and then I would share that survey with the stakeholders.
Hello, my name's Derek Wall. I'm a first year school board trustee. Welcome. Thank you for comment. And my three questions will be about political awareness. What is your biggest concern regarding the political climate of education in Michigan? And as our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits our district and public education throughout our state?
I think the biggest issue happening in all school districts right now is this public attacks on school boards. Last time I checked, no one ran for school board to be rich, right? They wanted to make a difference. But now this politicizing of education and masking and not masking has really created a divide that did not exist 3 or 4 years ago. That is current. That's why you see a lot of board members resigning, a lot of superintendents resigning, because it's dealing with that polar opposites. So how do we bring that together? Well, listening without being defensive is step one. Getting that in, I've had to do that for the last 3 years, and is very easy to want to respond. And you want to, say, defend yourself or say your piece. But we are the professionals. And sometimes we have to be tunnel vision on serving kids. And if you're turning left, turning right, addressing this person or that person or this attack or that attack, you're losing sight of the focus. And what's the focus? It's the kids. So you really have to have tough skin, sitting at that table, this table, but being able to be teachable, right? No one claims that they know it all, right? No one knows it all. Mistakes happen, misunderstandings occur. What do we do after that? What do we do? How do we bring people together? I am sure all 7 of you have a difference of opinion on one item or another, whether it's curriculum or DEI or SEL. Everyone has different points of view. How do you come together for one sole vision? The way we do it together is the way the public needs to do it. We come up with common ground. It's very easy to divide, but I could also find common ground with anyone. And if you build on that common ground, trust will follow. And it's not trust in what I'm saying, is watch what I'm doing, watch what we're doing, and trust the work, trust the process. If the process is not working, let's deal with the process. Let's not deal with personal attacks.
What are specific ways in which our district should be working with other local districts to collectively improve students' achievement?
I think you're doing that. I was watching one of your board meetings when you talked about English language learners and how you're working with Wayne Risa on that. So that's one way to partner to reap the benefits of an ISD. I know the superintendent, DeVito, when we worked together at Oakland County. But superintendents, I'm sure just in Wayne County, just as at Oakland County, we meet once a week. We make collective decisions together, and we discuss issues that we're facing together. We support one another. We see how one group is dealing with one issue, and we bring it back to the team. So just because you right now are not dealing with one item, doesn't mean that it won't come to the forefront soon enough. Well, if we're aware of it and we have a game plan that someone already has developed, we could tweak it to District 7 and then implement that instead of just reinventing the wheel every time an issue arises.
And my last question would be, what impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
I'll tell you what, having been a teacher in that 40% accountability, it is devastating to someone's desire to help the kids. If you talk to any teacher at one point or another, if you ask them, why did you go in education? It was not so, I want to make sure all students are proficient by 2025 in ELA. It's because they want to mold and shape lives. But if they're addressing standardized testing all the time, when can they support that social emotional? If I ask you right now, who's your favorite teacher? Are you going to tell me, Mr. Abdulahad, because he really taught me, equations? Or are you going to go back to a memory that you had, an experience that you had with a teacher, whether they lifted you up at bad times or supported you during, if you perform bad on a test? So yes, we have to meet those accommodations, but standardized testing is one leg of that stool. There's also local assessments. There's NWEA assessments. So with local assessments, you can do pre and post, and you could show a year's worth of growth or 2 years worth of growth on a student that might not necessarily be proficient on MSTEP. If you have an immigrant come in who's not even reading, or is testing at the first grade reading level and they're in 5th grade, and you could get them to go from 1st grade to 4th grade, that kid is still going to be not proficient on the MSTEP. But to me, that's a success story. That teacher had 3 years worth of growth for that student. So we should be celebrating that. I mean, there's 100,000 teacher shortage positions. I really think by continuing to raise the bar on educators, you're going to continue to lose educators. When right now we need to retain as many, and that's a point of pride that you have in the in this district, is the staff retention. It's the longevity of your staff. So we really have to invest in the staff. We really have to give them the materials that they need so then they can be successful. And if they're not successful, is it a gotcha moment? Or is it, how can I support you? Here's what, let's look at the data. What went wrong? How can we adjust? And how can we learn from it? I guarantee you'll get a better performance from a teacher if you do it that way than walking up to a teacher and saying, you know what, your kids did not score in 40%, therefore you're ineffective. I'm going to put you on an improvement plan. That teacher is going to look at you as their enemy. First thing, I guarantee you, the first thing they're going to do is, this is not a place where they want me to flourish.
At this point, I'd like to ask Tom.
Thank you. My name is Nate Pan. I'm a first year board member, I'm sorry. I'll be asking questions about leadership aptitudes. First question is, describe your style of leading and talk about situations in which you might vary from that style.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you might vary from that style.
So depending on the situation, depending on the situation, I might be in the forefront. Sometimes I'll be in the back, being the cheerleader, depending on what is needed. We have discussions. I'll lead privately, I'll correct privately, but I also don't want to lead the charge when things are being successful. I don't need accolades. I don't need, praises. I believe let's save those for leadership, for administration, for teaching staff, support staff. And then making yourself available when something goes wrong. As a principal, I used to welcome teachers that would take risk in lessons. Take a risk. You have a great idea, try it out. Don't be afraid to fail. Now, if it fails, I'm not one to say, gotcha. Let's reflect, let's see what happened, and let me continue to build up. Personally, whether I was a teacher, principal, superintendent, I like to serve. I like to give back. I want to leave whatever I do or wherever I'm at better than I found it, whether it's kids, schools, districts. I want to have a legacy of, when you're thinking about Mr. Abdulahad, you know what? He really cared. He cared about me, cared about my family. He helped me out. And he did it out of love. So I brought on this year, I brought Capturing Kids' Hearts to the district. I believe it's a 2-year program that I brought. I'm not sure if you've heard of Capturing Kids' Hearts, but if you don't have a kid's heart, it doesn't matter if you know English, if you're phenomenal. If you don't have that kid's heart, you have nothing. But if you win that kid's heart, they will go to war for you. They will go to battle for you. When it's time to correct behavior, you do it out of love, just like in our children. When I educate or when I correct my kids, afterwards I show an increased love, but I do it out of a place of love. And I had established that relationship, just like I would establish that relationship with the kids or with the staff. And everything is, you could teach a lot. You can't teach heart, but you could teach skills that will allow someone to learn how to capture a kid's heart. And I truly believe that has been at the core of my values and my beliefs. Lead with love, lead with love. It does not mean that everything was roses and lollipops at school. There's times we had to correct behavior. There's times we had to have tough talks. But you do those privately, and you correct privately, and then you praise publicly.
So, thank you. Next question is, what is the most difficult situation you have had to deal with in your educational career, and how was it resolved?
Well, last time I checked, there were no COVID classes, right? In the last 3 years, I'd like to say I'm battle tested. Every year it's been like 10 years. I did not have all this gray hair 3 years ago. COVID is taking a toll on a lot of people, Well, can you repeat that question one more time?
What is the most difficult situation you have had to deal with in your educational career, and how was it resolved?
So we're still working through it, but this year we went 5 days a week, full classes. We only had 37 kids pick virtual. Everyone liked our models. We had enough space for everyone. We had our plan. We shared it. Out of 1,000 students, we had only 37 that picked virtual. And the reason why, I believe, because they had some immune, but a lot of people picked in person because they were ready to go back. The kids were ready to go back. We're still working through it, but we do contact tracing right now. 80%, 90% of our time is contact tracing, helping the nurse, having the administrators help the nurse, and finding opportunities to bring some sort of normalcy for the families. We've opened everything up to our volunteers. We opened everything up to conferences in person, all activities. We have trunk or treat coming up. We have our science night coming up. You could do things safely, especially outside. There's no mandates for outside. So any opportunity that we have to make things outside in kind of normal for the kids, I'm going to be for that. We did conferences in person, even though it wasn't popular. But my stance on it was, if you want virtual, no problem. But I don't want to make that decision for everyone. I want to give people option, because I guarantee you there's a lot of parents that want, to go back to normal. So we provide that for those parents, and the parents that want to do conferences virtually, we provide that for them as well. But I did not take away the option of those parents that wanted it in person.
Next question is, what are the key elements needed to establish and maintain a good working relationship between you and our board?
So the question would be, what's going to happen when we disagree? Because we're going to disagree. I have my beliefs, my thoughts, you have yours. So the question is, what happens when we disagree? Now, I'll never disagree publicly, right? Publicly, we'll stand united, but I will have discussions and I'll be open to dialogue and discussion with board members. But I believe we could find common ground. I believe you're all here for the same reason. If I were to ask you, why are you here? You're not going to say, because I want to get financial freedom in my life, right? I looked at what you guys were getting paid. It's far less than what our board's getting paid, but you're doing it because you want to make a difference. So if we have that shared vision on making a difference, the other things could come together. Now, I'm a big supporter of diversity and equity and inclusion. Having been an immigrant myself, knowing what I've gone through, hearing from my wife is half South African, half Portuguese, and the stories that she tells me from South Africa with the divide, it's true. There is a divide. So I experienced that as a child growing up. My son is experiencing that now in high school, and we live in Troy. And they ask questions, hey, you know how to make bombs, because his last name's Abdulahad. So that is huge for me to create equity, because our students need to see a reflection of themselves with a teacher, with a leader. Prior to this year, we were 45% Caucasian, 45% African-American, 10% Arabic population. Now, the students saw me, even though being Arab-American, but they need to see a reflection of themselves in the community, in the district. They need to see role models that share their culture, their ethnicity, their race, because it gives them something to aspire. Hey, so-and-so is I want to be a teacher. I want to be a principal. So I think that is key, but I wouldn't push you beyond the point where it becomes confrontational or argumentative. I could only take you as far as you're comfortable going. Will I push? Yes, absolutely. I'll push. Absolutely. I'll advocate for things, but I won't. I'll also be understanding if you're not there yet. Some districts are not there yet. We just started the work. We created a district plan with diversity, equity. So I mean, that is near and dear to my heart, but I already seen that you already started some of the work already with the presenters. Was it the last board meeting? Yep. So.
Thank you. And my last question, given your research on our district, what do you believe our vision for the future should be? And how might you inspire the entire district in pursuit of the vision?
Right now, your goal is educating kids with proficiency. I wrote it down. I believe we need to revisit that because we really need to address the whole child. So our vision should be addressing the whole child, but that's my perspective. Again, I wouldn't just come up here and give you my perspective of the little that I know of your community. I would need stakeholder input. I would need to talk to the parents to get feedback from them, talk to you to get feedback from you. It would take me time to understand the community, so I could better lead. I want to leave District 7 in a state where every child is more than a number. Every child matters. That they feel loved when they walk in that through our doors, or when they get received from the bus driver, which is your first point of contact. When they get picked up by a bus driver, how is that interaction? Are the kids going home happy and telling you stories? Now, I see a lot of points of pride when you do your board meetings. You do a lot of shout outs to employees. I would also like to celebrate and highlight interactions of the kids and some of the things that they're doing. And I believe you're doing some of, but I didn't get far enough into your board meetings to see.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask a question over to Ms. Latanya Gator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Can. Hello, Mr. Abdulahad.
Hi.
I am trustee Latanya Gator. And my first question is, and it's under the umbrella of instruction and curriculum. What experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap for economically disadvantaged and minority students?
So we are 90% free and reduced at Madison District. So first thing that I did is remove that barrier of having to pay for meals, having to pay for participation in sports. I removed that because it does get costly. So I removed the barriers of entry on being able to be involved as a parent. If I have to think about how much it costs me for meals, and then I got to clothe my children, and then I got to pay for participation, then who's going to suffer? The haves or the have-nots? The have-nots are going to suffer. So if we remove that, that kind of levels some playing field. Now you have English language learners. It takes 7 years to acquire cognitive academic learning proficiencies. Now, when I was in school, they didn't know the difference between basic intercommunication skills and cognitive academic learning that could transpire. Because Angel spoke English and learned English quickly, because what happened, we went from Iraq to Spain and we waited for visas. So it took us 5 years. So I learned Spanish. And then once you learn one of the Romance languages, it's a lot easier to pick up another one. So then I came to America in 86. I picked up English in 6 months. Well, just because you know how to speak doesn't mean that you could read poetry and understand what the poetry means. So it kind of passed you along but there is a huge gap between basic communication skills and cognitive skills. So what I did is I started out as a teacher and I started doing English as a second language, but I also taught bilingual education. And I was bilingual certified. I was bilingual certified in Spanish, but I could take any content and transfer it to Arabic. And so that's what I was doing in Madison. I had a lot of immigrants there. So I would take social studies and I would, transfer into Arabic, and the words that I didn't know how to use academic vocabulary, I would call my mom and say, "Mom, how do you say this in Arabic?" And she would laugh, but I would do whatever it takes. I also partnered in 2014, we had 0 students at Wilkinson Middle School that tested proficient in science. So we created data teams, instructional data teams. My ed specialist is in curriculum instruction. I wanted to do that, but as I furthered my career, I figured I have that. I could use that in anything that I do. I have that instructional awareness. I could bridge that gap from any angle. And so we sure jumped from 0 students proficient, in a school of about 220 to 9 kids proficient, which is a huge jump. Was it enough? Probably not, but it was a huge jump for our students. And our English language learners had huge gains, because when the teachers were not able to teach that content. Now, yes, some things you could use with total physical response, which is TPR, which is what ESL teachers will use when they don't know the language. I didn't have that barrier, because whether it's a Spanish student, Spanish speaking student, or an Arabic student, I could speak to them in their language. And it makes a lot easier transition, instead of trying to use gestures or some skills that might not necessarily work when you have an immigrant who is just coming into the district, who has a lot of history of maybe not being in school in whatever country they were in.
Thank you.
Mhm.
My second question is, please give us examples of educational change or reform that you have initiated in your career that have led to improvements in student learning.
Okay. So I'm old school in one regard. So I'm not a believer of, let's use iPads and even though, yes, we are 101, there's something said about a textbook, a consumable, going home with parents. So I kind of reversed that, said, okay, we have computers. Everyone has computers. Everyone's using computers, but there's something missing. As a parent, you need a textbook in front of you. If you're going to help your children, give me a consumable, give me a textbook. The textbook could be online, which is what we did. We bought licenses for the textbooks, so they could do that, but then also allowing kids to take a consumable home so they could work on their homework with their parents. So prior to me at our elementary, everything was either teachers pay teachers, which I don't believe in personally, and or iPads. Well, as a parent, you know, I had at that time I had 3 children in elementary school, and this is not working. You know, the math is different. I can't go back and reference anything because there's no textbook. So we brought on math expressions. We brought on a Chief 3000. We brought on new English in reading arts curriculum, all within 2 years at the elementary school. Technology is still there. We have iPads. We got Chromebooks. That's still there. The licensing is still there. We brought instructional coaches in. And that might not be popular with some. For me, that's how I could help my kids. I figure there's a lot of people like me where they need textbooks to help their children. And so I figure, why not? We have this extra money. Why not use it for something that is there? You could do one-time purchase, then you could manage your licensing through Title I, or if they're language learners, you could do Title III, and things like that.
Thank you. My next question is, what do you believe are currently the biggest challenges with special education in our region? How should these challenges be addressed?
So having a daughter in special education and seeing what they go through, it is not fair. It is not fair. They are entitled to, and it's the law that they get everything everyone else, plus some. It's not in lieu of, oh, we'll do this. No, you give me what every other kid gets, plus on top of that, you give me the support that I need so I could be successful. And as a superintendent, I would have meetings. I would sit in those IEP meetings and I would give feedback. I would tell them, hey, ask this question, because sometimes parents are not informed. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. And so the parent in me, I have to interject and I have to say, well, you have these options. You have these options. It's up to us to make it work. Don't worry about whether we can do it or not. But what I don't like hearing is, well, we don't do that here. Because if you know anything about me, I'm going to challenge that status quo all day, every day, all day. Don't tell me that, well, this is how it's been done, and so this is how we're used to. Great. Great. That might work. It's not enough for me.
Thank you.
Sorry. I
Thank you.
get emotional about that one, but
Okay. My last question, how would you meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
so in Madison Heights, we had CASA, Center for Advanced Arts and Studies, for those kids that need more than what the district is able to provide. And so our job is to meet you where you are. Not only the lower end or the middle, what about the upper students? You can't forget about them. And we have a tendency in society to teach to the middle. Oh, the smart kid is the quiet kid, so they'll be okay. No, they're entitled to an education too. And they're entitled to an education that meets them where they are. So if they're AP and they're having a 4.24, and it means sending them to, for us as Oakland Community College, that's what we have to do. I'd rather spend that money that way than spending it on other things. I won't regret spending money on kids and their success. So if it's, and I'm not sure what Wayne Risa offers for additional AP classes, but I would try to see, and I would have to see what AP courses are offered here at Annapolis High School.
Thank you.
Mm.
That concludes my questions, and I will pass it off to my peer, Ms. Whistler.
Hi.
Karen Whistler, Board Secretary. My next questions are regarding finances. So the first one is, please describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget reductions.
So it's funny because when the board asked me to come on board, there were some things that transpired with previous management that left us without a superintendent or a CFO. So when they asked me to be interim, here you go, Mr. Abdulahad. You have 3 months to balance our budget, see where we really are, and come up with a game plan. So we had to produce a budget. I produced them a line item budget. The first time ever, they had never seen a line item budget. Everything was 1 or 2 pages. And I'm like, well, the board should know where every dollar goes. And you can't really see that when you see a single sheet of paper that says general, additional costs, or things like that. You don't get to see it. We broke it down where custodial, supplies, this building, here's what teaching supplies for this building were. Here's how much administrator offices get. Here's what the board's budget is. Here's how much you get for training. We broke it all down. And I had a board member confess that they've been on that board for 8-9 years and they had never seen a line item budget. So yes, we had to produce a budget. I am hands-on. I won't sign off on something, whether it's directly underneath me or in your case is under the assistant superintendent, which I just kind of help myself on things, especially with finance, because when it's all said and done, if things go wrong, it's on whose head? On the superintendent. So I like to make sure that I know where every dollar is going. So when you have questions about revenue coming in or expenditures, then I'll answer those. So I don't sign off on just willy-nilly something because it doesn't fall under my direct care. I go through the check registry. I mean, that's one of the first things that I would do in your in this district. I would go back a year just to see what's going on in your district, and the check registry cannot hide anything, right? So I would go through the check registry. I have a great relationship with my board treasurer. I walk her through everything. My board president, board secretary is always in the office signing off. You know how they have to sign off on things. I have every 2 or 3 days, I'll have phone conversations with my board president. Here's where we are. Here's where we're coming up. We produce where we are with Esther's money. We actually shared with the board and everyone all the different monies that would come into the district. Title I, Title II, Title III, GEARS funding, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. Here's how much we're entitled to. Here's some ideas of what we're looking to, utilize that for. And you can't really do that if you're not well-versed in finance. So in your district profile, it shows you have 28 million with a 10 million fund balance. I'm like, wow, that's great. But I don't never take anyone for their words. So the first thing that I would do is I would look at it and say, let me, we trust but verify. I always say that. I trust you, but I'm going to verify what you're saying is as accurate.
The next question is, what opportunities do you believe budget limitations present? In tough financial times, what are your top 3 priorities?
Can you read the first part again?
What opportunities do you believe budget limitations present?
Well, just like at home, right? You have what you have coming in. You cannot rely on one-time payments of ESSER. So you kind of have to separate those limitations. You cannot run a household, for example, run your household based on the stimulus money that you got, because that was one time. So you got to remove those things. You look at your budget, see where you are, and see what you're able to do. Then you utilize title monies to support some programs that are needed, that are continuing to flourish with some title money. And then if I also believe in giving people financial freedoms, because I believe that giving employees financial freedom will yield better performance. So we have secured in the last 2.5 years, administrator contracts 3 years, teacher contracts 3 years, custodial contracts 3 years, cafeteria workers 3 years, paraposts 3 years, and secretaries 3 years, all with raises. Now, we did it fiscally responsible. We didn't just throw everything out. We saw what we could afford. You got to remove the ESSER funding from it and the one-time money's coming in. See what you could afford and paying people. If you pay people, you will have less likely chance of having people leave, especially right now. What are teachers doing? They're shopping around. They're shopping around because whether it's Utica or Detroit's paying $15,000 a year for 2 years as a retention bonus or sign-in bonus, and they're bringing in, it's not sustainable. So whatever they're doing, I know it's not sustainable. They're just trying to keep people from looking. So we've actually only have 2 vacancies. With all this shortfalls, well, 2 teaching positions, I take that back, 2 teaching position vacancies. We do have a custodial vacancy that we're trying to fill. But when employees could go to Costco, when a custodian could go to Costco and make $18 an hour, why would they come in and work with the kids and do all that for $14 or $15 an hour? You have to see the shortages going on and you have to adapt.
What is your experience with millage renewal, bond proposals, and sinking fund proposals? What is the key to the success of such initiatives?
So we just passed the operating millage 8 for 10 years. The maximum Headley with the Headley rollback that we had. We just passed 10 years. We did that. We have a current bond that is out right now for a no mill increase for $11.4 million. We also refunded the 2013 bonds that we had. It was 9.8 million, and we refunded it with just a lower rate. We saved almost $800,000 just like you would refinance a house. So I would look at what debt you have outstanding and you're absolutely within your right to refund it. It does not take a vote by the community. It actually is just a motion done by the board. And then, I'm not sure if you work with PFM or who do you work with? We worked with PFM and Stiefel. But we refunded, we made it public. We let the taxpayers know that we saved you $750,000 just by refinancing at a lower rate. Why did we do that? We were trying to show that we were good stewards. The last two bonds in our community failed because they didn't trust the board, they didn't trust administration. So now we're going with pure infrastructure. There's no bells and whistles. There is, here are our needs. This is a no mill increase. In 2019, the millage rate was 7.76. It is currently 3.86. So we already reduced what taxpayers are paying. Why? Because the more you build a sense of trust within the tax base, and when you do need to go to them for money for infrastructure, they're more likely to help.
I'm going to turn the questioning over to Ms. Gyro.
Hi, Mr. Abdulahad. Welcome to District 7. I can't see you, and I apologize for that. My category is staff and personnel. And my first question is a two-part question. How would you interact with other administrators in our district? And how would you strike a balance between giving them the support and autonomy they need to lead effectively while holding them accountable as appropriate and necessary?
So if your relationship is not there, which is not, would not be there for me currently, right? Because I have to establish those relationships. I would have to first establish those relationships with them. And at first, when I first contemplated and had an internal conflict about when I was a union president for teachers, I had that same conflict. Well, how do you hold people accountable? Then I realized that my job is to advocate for the kids, because everyone is advocating for the adults. Who's advocating for the kids? So when I do have to have those talks with people, I'm looking at it from the lens of, it's my job to protect this kid. And something happened where this kid is not getting serviced, whether it's administration or not, or teaching staff. But I don't try to shame them publicly. I mean, I'll have talks with them privately, and I don't mind doing that. You'll learn this about me. I am not afraid to call things out. Just during the last 3 years here as a superintendent, when there's issues that need to be addressed, I'm going to address them. But if there is damage done to that relationship, I also know that I have to go back and show love afterwards. I have to rebuild that relationship, because if I'm steadily just destroying Mandy, I don't like what you're doing, Mandy's going to look at me as her enemy. So when I do need to correct Mandy, and I'll say, I really don't like how this transpired, then I find opportunities to celebrate that same administrator publicly. And so if I do that, and I have done that in my relationships with the admins, I have promoted two of the admins currently. I mentored one of the admins when I was a principal and she was a teacher, and then I hired two more. And I always look at it from the lens of building a puzzle. How does this person fit into the puzzle? Because in the end, we're going to paint a Picasso, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be centered around the kids. So what happens when someone goes rogue and someone has to rein them in, right? That has to be me. It's tough when you have those discussions. It's tough when you have to stare at someone, whether you're laying them off or reprimanding them or putting them on a plan of assistance and looking at them, it gets emotional. I don't know if any of you have had to do that. It's heartbreaking when you're looking at someone and you have to have talks with them, but those talks need to be had.
Thank you. Next question is, please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
I think my fondest memory is we sent out an experiment to the space station. We had a group of 4 refugees that developed a science experiment that was selected to go to the International Space Station. Now, what happened is the first time we sent that experiment through SpaceX, it blew up. It went up. We had a watch party. It was going up, and then boom, exploded. And it was a shock. It was a shock. But SpaceX, and it's called the Student Space Flight Exploration Program. So they allowed us to do another one, and they flew us out. My wife and I, my family, we went out to Cape Canaveral. We saw the rocket there. We took some pictures. But watching a whole school catch the space bug, I don't know if you witness I had every student be in a group and worked on that experiment, and I was working with all of them. But it wasn't just me. I had, it was 3 other teachers that we worked together. And I mean, I was an ESL Spanish teacher. I had no idea anything about space, but when you catch that, when you see a whole school rallies around something, I think that's my most fondest experience I've had as an educator, to work with teams of kids.
Thank you. Next question is, what would you suggest in terms of a comprehensive professional development plan for our educators? And specifically, what would be the key priority areas as well as the delivery system?
So I would have to look at your Title II money to see how you've set aside your professional development money already for this year, and see what I could maneuver. What we did at Madison is we used all our Title II dollars for professional development, but we didn't wait till school started. That's not enough time. If you look at the calendar, that's not enough time. So we said, when are teachers or staff the most relaxed? Summertime. They don't have to worry. They don't have any obligations of teaching. So we offered to compensate them and allowed them to choose the direction of their learning. Now, we kind of created the umbrella of the learning and the professional development, but we allowed them to decide what they wanted to learn, and we compensated for them. You can't just rule with an iron fist and say, well, here's what we're going to do. If you could compensate, then you should compensate. You value people for their time, and when you do that, they're more likely to perform. We brought on Capturing Kids' Hearts this year for our SEL, social emotional learning. It's a 2-year program. It costs us about $70,000. We got it. You know, the Arabic in me always likes to haggle. So I talked to Capturing Kids' Heart. I said, we're a Title I school. And they were able to give us a discount. And so we did that. This is year 1 of implementation. And we have the champions process coming up, where we select educators in every building, and they will be the lead instructors. So when we have new teachers coming in, we could onboard them rather quickly because we have staff that's already well-versed and trained in that, and they could onboard them much quicker than for us to try to find a professional development for them to attend.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll turn it back over to President Harrelson.
All right.
So now is your opportunity. If you would like to ask us some questions, you are more than welcome to take a few minutes to do so.
Okay. So coming in, I would come in, what would be the board's primary focus the first 3 months? And then after that, the first 6 months. So if I were to ask you, all right, you got me, I'm here. What is your number one short-term goal right now as a board for this district? What would that be?
I can go first.
Sure.
There is so much that we look forward to and we are kind of overlooking at the moment. But I think for the first 3 months for me, it's that connection and that trust between the superintendent and the board members. Because I feel like when you were talking with that trust of children, it's the same thing with our trust in our partnership. So we have that team effort that, we trust you in your decisions as well as you look at us and trust us with the information that we give you. So that is one important thing that I would like to start from the very beginning is that relationship building within the board as well as the superintendent. Anybody else?
Yes. And I agree with you, President Harrelson. Mr. Abdulahad, to your second part of the question, what may be a top priority in the 6 months? I think understanding the true needs of the students needs to have hyper focus. I think due to COVID, we maybe lost some of that because we're very concerned about health and safety, and that's perfectly fine, and I agree with that. But they have other needs also, academic needs and how the new normal is with that. Of course, social emotional needs, what is the new normal with that? And again, I don't necessarily know if we are able to do that if we've had other priorities. So that's something that I would like to see, and I think the district would benefit from it.
Are you opposed to board training, superintendent training, where you could establish relationships and come up with norms and a vision and a mission that is suitable for the team?
We've done it before.
You've done it.
I think we're on that track.
Okay.
As we speak, we just had a informative presentation the last board meeting to develop our needs as a board and how we're going to basically learn from those and move forward.
Mhm.
And I think the full board was willing to move forward and to do those trainings.
Okay.
Tyra, did you have anything?
Well, I did bring, and this is for you to look at, I did come up with an entry plan and a little bit about me, about what I stand for, what my beliefs, my morals are. One thing that really caused me to apply here was your profile. And one of your profiles that said the ability to do the right thing even when no one's watching. And doing the right thing is not always popular. And it makes waves and it causes tension, but it's the right thing. And so really that's what attracted me. And it's your district profiles. I said, oh, this board, wants someone that will do the right thing, whether you're in your office by yourself or in front of everyone. And so with me, what you see is what you get, whether you see me at home with my kids, or if you see me at a game, or if you see me at board meetings, this is me. You don't see a different side of me. This is all of me. And I hope that you've had a chance to see that here in this interview today. And I thank you for giving me the chance to interview. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you as
Well,
well.
Mr. Abdulahad, we appreciate your interest in the superintendent position for Dearborn. The board is interviewing 4 candidates this week. We will let you know Wednesday evening where you stand in that process. But thank you again for your participation in the first round.
Thank you.
It was very nice.
Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you.
I'm just going to hand you.
Thank you. As you return home, be safe.
Yeah.
Safe travels. Thank you.
Thank you.